So in 1962, when my brother and I were little kids, my mom decided that it was time for her to follow her gut. She just couldn't deny her inner guidance any longer, so she decided it was time to sell our home in Columbus, Ohio, leave her family, her friends, just about everything she knew, and move us all to California. Now, you see, my father had just died a few months prior to this. And, well, she was devastated. You know, her whole world was turned upside down. My father was her whole life. He took care of everything, except for raising the kids, which is 100% her responsibility. But she didn't have a job. She didn't know how to balance a checkbook. She just barely learned how to drive. I mean, this was the early 60s, middle America. Women couldn't get a loan, couldn't even have a bank account without a man co-signing. You know, this was not the great time in America, at least for women. And my mom was, she was kind of a fearful person to begin with. And, you know, she's not exactly a risk taker. And she knew no one in San Diego, really didn't have any idea how all of this was going to work out. So to say that this was huge for her was a vast understatement. And, you know, she had this deep conviction that California offered her something, a new opportunity to start over, to find out who she was, and to allow us, her children, to become the people that we were meant to be. You know, back then, Ohio, it may still be that way now, but back then it was really conservative. And she always felt so repressed. And she did not want her children to grow up in that same fearful, repressed environment. And so we made the journey. But it was not easy. You know, as I was saying to George the other day, we traveled across country in the middle of summer in a station wagon with no air conditioning. 2 kids fighting in the back. You know, there was a lot of this. And I was really little, but I remember how hot it was. I remember that when we were going through Texas, she would stop at every gas station and go to the bathroom and wet the paper towels and put it on her neck, on her shoulders, you know, and then we'd get back in the car and it was like dry in 2 seconds. But she kept stopping and kept doing this whole thing. And, you know, California, setting up a new life in a new city, was full of its own challenges as well. But my mother she just somehow reached deep down and she found her inner strength. She found her courage. She connected with this inner power of divine faith. Not faith in God, but the faith of God. And you know, it just sort of all began to come together. And fast forward, when I was a teenager, we all found a spiritual community that launched us all on a lifelong spiritual journey. So indeed, we became the people that we were meant to be. We had that opportunity. She was right. Her deep conviction, her faith, created from the ashes a miraculous life for all of us. One of my favorite biblical quotes, I think I've shared with you before, is from Hebrews. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. In some versions, it's the substance of things not seen. So someone who has developed their inner power of faith lays hold of this infinite, invisible substance, and working in cooperation with spiritual laws can create something miraculous out of seeming nothingness. Charles Fillmore says about faith, Faith is the perceived power of the mind, linked with a power to shape substance. It is spiritual assurance, the power to do the seemingly impossible. It is a force that draws to us our heart's desire right out of the invisible substance. It is a deep inner knowing that that which is sought is already ours for the taking. The assurance of things hoped for. So we talked last week, if you'll remember, a little bit about how the best stories from the beginning of time through the centuries are always about the hero's journey. And it seems like every movie that you see nowadays, adventure movies, certainly hero movies, superhero movies, even Disney movies these days, follow a similar format. It's the reluctant hero, always reluctant, has an inkling, like there must be something more, goes on a quest, and in that quest discovers their inner power, learns to work with that inner power, and then brings that back to the tribe, to the people, to help, the people, or help save the world. Can you think of any movies that you've seen recently? Moana. That's a good example, yeah. Moana. Anything else?
Kubo and the Two Strings.
What's that? Kubo and the Two Strings. Anybody seen that movie? Ooh, that's a good thing on Netflix. Shrek. Maybe, in a way, Shrek, right? He finds his inner strength. Yeah, absolutely. Certainly the Harry Potter series, right?
Oh, this is what you guys do.
Yeah, and certainly, Star Wars series. So it's a popular format because it speaks to something deep within us, some deep inner truth. Now, you see, we might be tempted to think that only some people can be heroes, that only some people have great faith. But we actually all have great faith. The question is, what are we having faith in? Some of us have a deep conviction that the body deteriorates as we get older. Some people have a deep belief that, they'll just never have a healthy relationship with money. Some people believe that the opportunities have passed them by. Some people have a deep feeling that, they're just not as good as other people in whatever area. And now this may not sound like faith, but remember our definition. It is a deep conviction. Faith is a deep conviction. It is more than just a belief. It is more than even, trust that God will prevail. Because remember, that's seeing a God outside of us, like a superhero kind of God, right? True faith is deep trust, assurance, an unshakable confidence that, in something that you just can't yet see. Something that is totally invisible to everybody else except for the one who has the faith. They can see it clearly, right? They know they can see it clearly. They know that deep down within them, within all of us, that there is a power that moves us inexorably towards wholeness, towards a more expansive life. So that's our definition of faith, deep conviction. So these other things that I mentioned, that's deep conviction, right? It's probably unconscious. For most people, it is unconscious, but, it's still there. A lot of people use their power unconsciously. Those things are not objectively true. Some people actually get healthier when they get older. Look at Charles Fillmore. He was healthier in his 80s than he was when he was in his 50s and he thought he was going to die. The people learn to have a healthy relationship with money. Some people have a great idea for a service or a product, and develop it and sell it and make a great fortune. You see this on Shark Tank a lot. Happens, right? It's possible. We are all beautiful, unique expressions of the one. We all have a unique gift to give the world, and limitless possibilities are available to all of us, no matter our age. So this idea, this deep conviction, this is really what faith really is. And so to believe otherwise, to believe other than this, is to kind of have misplaced faith. You know, faith in, from the physical senses, from the human dimension, from sense consciousness, faith from the personality level. And also what might be included in that is egocentric faith. And that is faith that is sort of formed by more dogmatic, unquestioned perception of life. This sometimes shows up as deep prejudice in some people. You may know people like this. You know, people who don't want to be confused by the facts. It's all fake news. Right? So that sort of segues us into this next idea about what faith is also comes from our perception, our general perception of life. Do we perceive life as a friendly place? This world is a friendly place that supports our efforts to live a joyous, successful life? Yes? Yes. Yeah. Or do we maybe think that the world is a hostile place that we have to struggle against? Again, this is unconscious. But that unconscious stuff, that colors our worldview. And it shows up as our faith. Now let me tell you, the best way to challenge your worldview is to have children. The moment you have a baby, your worldview changes, doesn't it? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and then just wait till they become teenagers. Yeah. Yeah, every single day will question every last belief you have. And actually, that's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's not always fun, but it's a good thing. And in fact, I think it's actually built into the system that when we adults get to a place in our growth and our lives where we think, I got it all figured out. You know, I kind of know what's what. Our kids become teenagers, and all that gets thrown out of the window. And, you know, there's two kinds of parents. They're the kinds of parents that dismiss it all as, well, they don't have enough life experience to know any better. They do think that they know everything at this age. But they just dismiss everything as nonsense. Their kids is ignorant. Then they're the other kind of parents who listen. You know, like, that's interesting. Tell me more. Tell me, how is it that you came to see that? My husband and I try to be the people in that second category. Not always successful, but we try to be. And I have to say that some of my perceptions of life have actually shifted based on my children's input. Truly. And, you know, speaking of my mom was the same way. She actually respected what I had to offer. She would listen when I questioned her beliefs. Of course, it was the late 60s, early 70s. So, you know, everybody was questioning the status quo. But she listened. She listened, and many things that she believed before shifted based on mine and my brother's input. So that's, you know, if you don't have any teens in your house right now, I encourage you to go hang out with some teens. And listen.
They're much nicer to people that they don't call mom and dad.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's true. And if you're looking for opportunities, we do have, this volunteer opportunity. You can work with the teens here. You go back into the chapel after the service and just listen to what they have to say. It's kind of eye-opening. So that is the perception aspect of having faith. And then there's the faith that comes from our physical senses. This is the idea that, we trust that when we sit in a chair, that we can relax our bodies because the chair will hold us there. And we have faith that during a solar eclipse, that it's not Armageddon, it's not the end of the world, it's not the apocalypse. When the light goes out, that's only a few minutes, and the moon moves, or we continue our rotation, or whatever the science is in that, but the sun does come back. The sun really never went anywhere to begin with, and you could take that metaphorically in many different ways. It's always there. The sun's always shining. So we trust, we know. Really back in the cavemen, can you imagine how they felt when a solar eclipse happened? What were they thinking? But now we know, we've experienced it, we trust the physical world. But spiritual laws operate in the exact same way as physical laws. We know that when we plant a little tomato plant in our garden in fertile soil and water it properly, that come summer, we will harvest some beautiful, ripe, juicy tomatoes. Not apples, not apricots, tomatoes. And when we plant seeds, pumpkin seeds in fertile soil and water it properly, that come the fall, we will see beautiful round pumpkins. Not zucchini, not okra, but pumpkins. And when we plant seed ideas of abundance in the fertile soil of our consciousness and water it with I am statements, that we can expect to reap a harvest of abundant prosperity, all providing sufficiency. And when we plant seed ideas of healing and well-being in the fertile soil of our consciousness and water it with I am statements, we can expect to grow health, strength, vitality in our bodies. The spiritual laws respond to our thoughts, to our deep beliefs in the same way that physical laws respond to our actions. In exactly the same way. So, we all have the power of faith. The question is, where is it coming from? On what level are we developing our faith from? From the physical senses, from our personality, from our ego? Or are we developing that power of faith from a higher level? The good news is that we can develop faith from that elevated consciousness, from the consciousness of our spiritual self, with practice. It's really very simple. It's practice. If we wanted to get good at our tennis game, we would go play tennis more often. We would take drills classes. We would practice our serve. If we wanted to learn how to dance the merengue, we would go take ballroom dancing classes and practice, and we get better dancing. Through spiritual practice, we can develop that consciousness of faith from that spiritual self. We can know at our core that we are spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe that's guided by spiritual laws. And then we become the people that have the faith that we can take that spiritual substance, that infinite substance, and working with spiritual laws, create something miraculous out of seeming nothingness. And the best way that I know to develop that power of faith is by meditating on that specific area with a specific meditation. Now, Charles Fillmore identified the power of faith. It goes along the lines of the 12 powers, which are sort of our energetic bodies, kind of like chakras. And that power of faith, he located it in the middle of our brain. And if you like to work with color, the color associated with this is royal blue, kind of like the blue that you have on. And so I thought maybe we would actually get a chance to practice this. We have time, yeah? Let's do this together. No time like the present. Let's practice this together. I'm going to be reading a guided meditation from my favorite person, Linda Martella-Whitsitt, from her book, Divine Audacity. She has a guided meditation for each one of these 12 powers, and this one is particularly good. So if you would just kind of get comfortable in your chairs, you just put down anything you have on your lap, and just take a few cleansing breaths. And if it's comfortable, close your eyes. Breathing in, breathing out. Focusing our attention on that power center. I bless this connecting link between the physical and the spiritual. Sensitive to the pulsing of life, the movement of energy, I shine the royal blue light of faith into the center of my brain. The spaces between the hemispheres brushed blue. I broadcast blue light throughout my brain and down through my body. A healing, streaming royal blue signifying my consciousness of faith. Faith is my ability to see what cannot be humanly seen. I activate this spiritual power, courageously perceiving a greater truth than my physical senses report. I dare myself to see what cannot be seen by human eyes, but exists as surely as the sun exists behind a cloud. I perceive the bottom line truths about life, that life is irrepressible, eternal, and perfect in every stage and form. I stretch my capacity to see the good that can be in troubling situations. I envision possibilities even in seemingly impossible circumstances. I am devoted to perceiving the good that can be. I am convinced that the nature of unseen good, the animating and harmonizing, creative power behind all that I have and experience is my nature. I am divine. I reach inward to my storehouse of faith during times when my human brain cannot envision the magnificent possibilities of wholeness, of life, harmonious love, and wealth beyond measure. I demonstrate conviction by living as love lives, as wholeness lives, as wisdom lives. I audaciously trust in universal goodness so much so that I rest deeply in the peace of spiritual assurance. By my innate power of faith, I live in positive expectancy. I center my attention in joyous anticipation, knowing all is truly well. Taking a nice deep breath in, just integrating that, and begin to bring your awareness back to the room, back into your body. Move a little bit. Practice this power of faith. And if you like this meditation, it is definitely recommended, this book, Divine Audacity. You could also listen to this tape. It will be posted on our website. Listen to the meditation part of it if you want to meditate along with it. Developing that inner power of divine faith. Namaste. Namaste.